This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by Coastal Mississippi. Play Coastal Mississippi. 62 miles of shoreline, outdoor adventures, casinos, fishing, and fantastic food. Perfect for fun-filled itineraries. Visit coastalmississippi.com and go have some fun for fun's sake. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm your host, Brian Jewell. I am totally pumped that you decided to spend some of your time with us today. And as always, our promise to you is that we're going to do everything we can to make that investment of your time worth your while. Now, today I'm going to bring you a featured conversation with Stacy Barry. If you don't know Stacy, she is the owner of Sharin the South, which is a receptive tour company in Middle Tennessee, as well as Memphis and Pigeon Forge, and also an outbound tour company taking people on trips throughout the Southeast. Stacy and I are going to talk all about how a receptive operator can help people like you plan better and more successful and maybe even more affordable trips, even to very, very busy and popular places like Nashville. You won't want to miss that. First, though, let's get into some travel news you may have missed. Amsterdam is working on plans to curb over-tourism and rowdy visitor behavior. The city had more than 23 million visitors last year, and officials expect that number to grow in 2024. But the city's deputy mayor, Sharin Barry, recently told the online travel publication Skift that the government is actively looking for ways to change that situation, saying it's about behaving, decreasing visitor numbers, and bringing a balance back into our city. The central component of that initiative will be a gradual restriction on cruise ships calling on the city. Amsterdam will begin lowering its cap on cruise ships docking at its main terminal in 2026, and plans to remove the terminal from the city center altogether by 2035. In addition, officials are working on regulations to restrict short-term rentals and return more of Amsterdam's housing stock to the local population. That comes in tandem with a policy to prohibit building new hotels within the city. Barkey also said the city is trying to shed its image as a sex tourism destination, in part by relocating its red light district to an indoor space away from popular visitor areas. Well, now it's time for our road tip segment. This is the part of every episode where we dig into our bag of travel knowledge from decades on the road and bring you tips that we think will help you make your next trip less stressful and more successful. You know, we're just a few days removed as I record this from the massive failure in technology and specifically in travel infrastructure caused by the CrowdStrike bug. It affected maybe your workplace computer, but it also deeply affected airlines, particularly Delta Airlines, which ended up canceling thousands of flights because of the bug, leaving hundreds of thousands of travelers impacted. I am thinking about that experience of being stranded in an airport or elsewhere in travel because of circumstances beyond my control. I know I have been there several times. I'm sure you have too. One of the memories that sticks out to me when I was young, I was traveling back from Europe, and for some reason I missed my connecting flight in New York that was going to take me from New York back home. It was the last flight out of the day, which meant I had to spend the night in New York City. Now, fortunately, I was able to get a hotel room. Some people affected by this CrowdStrike outage, because there have been so many people affected, they have not been able to get hotel rooms. They've been spending the night in airports. I was fortunate to get a room that night, but I was still in a little bit of a sticky, or should I say stinky, situation, because if you have ever flown overseas, you know that by the time you get to the US from wherever you started, well, you just aren't the freshest. You haven't had a shower, you've been moving and sitting and walking all day, and your clothes, they just don't smell or feel the best. Well, I landed in New York. I was exactly in that situation. And I had to make it in those same clothes to the hotel overnight and then back again the next morning to the airport to finish my trip on home to Lexington. So by the time I got home, I was well past the expiration date of the clothes I was wearing. And it taught me an important lesson, which is this: if you're going to travel, and especially if you're going to travel by air, you need to be prepared for a delay, and you need to have some things on hand to help you in case you find yourself in that unfortunate situation. So for today's road tip, I thought I would share with you what is in my travel delay survival kit. And yes, I really have this, and I carry it in my carry-on on every trip I take, so that whether I have to spend the night in a hotel I didn't expect, or whether something really goes wrong and I am stranded in the airport overnight or some other terrible situation like that. Heck, even if I have a car breakdown or a bus incident or something like that that changes my travel plans, I want to make sure I have these essentials on hand. So I'm going to give you 5 categories of things that are in my survival pack that you need to have and your customers need to have as well. So here we go. Number 1, some clean clothes. You don't want to smell as bad on your trip as I smelled on the final legs of that trip home from Europe. So in that survival kit, I'm going to have a change of socks, I'm going to have a change of underwear, and I'm going to have a t-shirt so that at least I can be somewhat fresh when I continue my trip, whenever I'm able to continue, and I don't feel bad and I don't smell bad and the people around me don't have to suffer. Number 2, some basic toiletries. That means at least a stick of deodorant and a toothbrush and a travel size toothpaste. Now, if you check your main luggage, you may be tempted to check all your toiletries along with that bag through to your final destination. And that's fine, but you need to have that deodorant and toothbrush and toothpaste in your carry-on in case you get stuck. Category number 3 is you need a charged up power block. Now, I'm talking about one of those extra battery packs that you can charge at your home or at your hotel or somewhere else, and then plug your phone into it if your phone runs low on batteries and you're not near a power outlet. Now, it's pretty easy to find power outlets in airports and other places under normal circumstances. But if you were to find yourself in a CrowdStrike type situation where thousands of people are delayed or canceled all at once, let me tell you, it would become very difficult to find power in that same airport very quickly. So for that reason, I keep a charged up power block. I travel with a pretty big one because I don't want to find myself in a situation where I don't have electricity, can't communicate with people at home, can't get work done, can't rebook my tickets or book a hotel. It's just too important to have power in my phone on those travel days. So that power block is essential. Category number 4 is snacks. Now, I'm partial to beef jerky because it's easy to pack, it's long lasting, it gives me a nice hit of protein. Other popular things would be trail mix, some almonds, maybe some granola bars. The reason you need to have some snacks on hand is because you cannot count on the airport's vendors being open at the time you are hungry. Now, we encountered this a lot during the months and I'd say a year or so directly after the end of pandemic. And when people started traveling again, many airport vendors were not open their normal hours, or when they were open, they didn't have the normal things they needed. If you are stuck overnight in an airport or some other place, you can't take it for granted that you'll be able to go to a restaurant or a convenience store and buy the food you need. So it's important to have some snacks on hand. And finally, you're going to want to have some entertainment. These days, I always travel with a book or 2 in my bag. I am partial to paper. Number 1, because it's a better reading experience. Number 2, because I don't have to worry about having a device charged. And if you're on a long delay, if you can't find a power outlet, you may not be able to count on your laptop or your Kindle or your iPad or your phone to provide you with entertainment for that downtime. So bring something to read. It could really get you out of a boring and sticky situation. And hey, you might even have some fun or learn something during an otherwise terrible experience. So pack that survival kit in your carry-on. If you're a frequent traveler, I would suggest you just leave it there. Sooner or later, it's going to get you out of a jam. That is your road tip of the week. All right, before we move on, I want to give you a little bit of news from us. Now, if you have been listening long, you may know that one of the things that we do here at the Group Travel Leader is facilitate some fam tours for travel planners like you to visit and get to know destinations around the country that partner with us. Those are a lot of fun. We have done dozens of them over the years and had the opportunity to welcome hundreds of you on those trips. Well, we have some exciting trips planned for 2025. Can I tell you about them right now? No, I cannot, but I can tell you this. You are not going to want to miss them. And I can also tell you another thing. Interest in these trips is always very high, and we routinely have more applications to join these FAMs than we have spots available, which means if you want to come on one, you need to get your application in as soon as you can. How do you do that? Well, it's really simple. You sign up for our on-site FAM announcement list. And when you do that, you will be the first person to know when we have a new FAM tour open for registration. Now you can sign up for that list at grouptravelleader.com/FAMs. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode as well. When you go to that page, you're going to see listings of any open trips we currently have for registration. You will also see some highlights and overviews of the dozens of trips we have done in the past, which actually make a great way to get some ready-made itineraries for fantastic destinations around the country and even a few around the world that we believe your travelers are going to love. But most importantly, on that page, you have a chance to sign up for our FAM announcement list. It just takes first name, last name, and email. Fill that information there, press the send button, and you will be on the list to get notified as soon as we have another great FAM opportunity available for you. So if you are interested in joining us on our FAM trips in 2025, well, press pause on this podcast. Go to grouptravelleader.com/FAMs. Sign up right now. I'll be waiting for you when you get back. Now, it's almost time for us to get into our featured conversation with Stacy Barry. Now, as we move into that, I want to remind you, you don't need to worry about taking notes during this conversation because I am taking notes for you. That's right. We're going to come back at the end of the interview with a wrap up of some of the most important and helpful things that Stacy had to say. You can also find much of that information on the show notes for this episode. And hey, let me encourage you to stick around through the interview and the wrap up, because after that, well, we're going to have what might be the hottest hot minute segment that we have ever had on the podcast. That's right. I am absolutely fired up about a tourism topic. I'm going to give you my in-depth thoughts, tell you exactly what I think. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back with Stacy Barry.
Let's go, my kiddos! Rise and shine! I am tired of early morning alarms and sitting in carpool lines. I want to relax with a spa day. No more family meetings. I want a family outing. Booked a big one there. My to-do list has taken over. How about a to-dream list instead? First up, play Coastal and go have some fun for fun's sake.
Make a vacation declaration of your own and start planning your escape to the Mississippi Gulf Coast at coastalmississippi.com.
All right, everybody. My guest today is a former teacher and school counselor who left her career in education to join her family's tourism business, Sharin the South. She has spent 7 years serving in various positions, including tour planner, operations manager, and marketing director for the company, which offers inbound receptive services in Tennessee and outbound tours to destinations around the Southeast. She serves on the board of the National Tour Association and draws on her experience as an educator and member of the military community to help plan engaging and innovative group travel experiences. Stacy Barry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
I am glad to have you here. I know we're going to have a ton of fun today. I want to hear more of the story about how you found your way from education into travel, because those are really, really different career fields. So what happened?
They are. And you know what's funny is travel has been in my blood and my family my whole life. I just did not want any part of it. And so I decided my sister and my mom have had the travel company for a long time, many years. Actually, Sharin, my mom, who founded Sharin the South, play on the name there. She started out as a tour guide of Nashville in the 80s. And so we did not
Wow.
go anywhere as a family where I didn't hear, if you look to the left, you would hear stories. So, but I decided to go into education and was a teacher and a high school counselor, and I loved it for a very long time. And then my husband retired from the Army and we moved back home, and I was going to have a baby due in August, which did not match very well with the school system. So she said, come and work for me and you can bring your baby with you, and that's fine, which was a wonderful opportunity. And after that year, I was going to go back to the school system. And instead, I stayed 7 more and bought the company from her. So it's just
Wow.
been a love.
Yeah. So what happened from growing up and saying, you know what, this is the family business, I'm not really interested, to all of a sudden now it's something you love? What changed inside you that made you love it?
I think the difference was hearing it and being involved in it. It's just very different things. And being a military spouse, I traveled a lot. You know, we moved to a lot of other places and I learned a lot about other cultures and other people. And that was such a valuable experience for me that when I came back, honestly, at the time, it was just a job. But the more I worked in it and spent time with her and spent time with people in the industry, the more I realized there was so much more to it than look to your left. And I really found a love for the people and, you know, not just the travelers, but the other people in our industry. It's a hospitality family and it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. I tell my mom often I use my counseling degree more in travel than I ever did in counseling. So she laughs about that, but it's just been great.
So we're going to talk a lot today about, you know, what it means to be a receptive operator and how you work with people. Give us a snapshot when you came on board at the company. What were the main things the tour company was doing, and how has that evolved in the last 7 years?
So the main market has really always Nashville. Obviously, that's where we live. That's where we're local to. And we were business to business, bringing groups to Nashville. So any tour operator from around the world or the country would say, hey, I've got a group of seniors or a student group and we want to do Nashville. So we would take it over as the local subject matter experts and plan everything from hotel to attractions to meals, provide your tour guides and handle it all. And it really is just a one-stop shop for another tour operator to write one check and be done and not have to worry about all the various calls and things that could come up. But we ended up, I think, it was probably 10 to 12 years ago, she bought a company in Memphis, a tourism company in Memphis. And so for a long time, we were Sharin Nashville and See Memphis Tours. And pre-COVID, that was a very long name and we ran it as that, but we really had worked on a new name and rebranding and kind of what we wanted to do. And then when COVID happened and everybody was different and all the sales managers changed, that was actually a great time for us to rebrand to Sharin the South. So we have been heavily doing Nashville, Memphis, and Pigeon Forge for years. But as things changed and as people traveled with us and things came back after COVID, they loved what we did in Nashville and Memphis and the trips we put together and said, where else can you take us? And so we've slowly evolved into doing some select other destinations. But I've always told everyone, if I can't do it as good as I did it in my backyard, I don't want to do it at all. Because I really take a lot of pride in what receptive operators offer and what the kind of experience that we can provide that an outbound tour operator cannot. And so I'm only going to pick a handful of cities that I know I can do as well as I can do Tennessee, or I will send you to someone else because I feel like that's just the best business decision because I want you to have a great time. I don't want to do something poorly. So that's kind of how we've grown a little bit.
All right. So in our industry, there are so many acronyms and so much jargon and words that everybody assumes you know, but nobody bothers to teach you sometimes when you're new to the industry. So I would love for you to explain for people that aren't familiar with the term, what we mean when we say receptive tour operator. Where does that word come from? And what is different about being a receptive than a city tour operator, an experience planner, some of the things that people may know about?
So receptive tour operator, and I don't know if it's the exact origin, but it was used heavily when people would come from other countries. So there are a lot of receptive tour operators in New York or Orlando or some of these bigger cities that are bringing people to the U.S. from European countries, South American countries. So that's one type of receptive tour operator. The funny part about that is a lot of those companies then use us as a local receptive. I get a lot of calls from the big receptives in New York that bring people from Europe that then use me to plan their Nashville. So they're going to help those groups get to the U.S. and navigate some of those challenges. But as a local receptive, basically that's it. You are the local subject matter expert, boots on the ground, relationships with the vendors that other people don't have. And so, for example, I've never been to South Dakota. And if somebody said, we want to go to South Dakota, now in my position, I would connect them with someone who's going to do it better than me. But if I were an outbound tour operator, the first thing I'm going to do is call a receptive tour operator in South Dakota and say, can you put this together for me? Number one, it's a huge time saver. So I can now work on other trips that I do want to be hands-on with. And the other thing is just the knowledge that you have with someone local when they book and plan is just so different than anything that, I'm going to put together for an outbound tour. We have a lot of people that call and they're kind of going over their itinerary before they've hired us. And they're going to stay maybe 30 minutes outside of the city, according to MapQuest. But I know that's an hour and 10 minutes easy on a Monday morning to get into town.
Yeah.
And so a lot of their timings are off and they're never going to make their scheduled events. And there's just little nuances like that you don't know if you don't live in a place, or in Nashville especially, where you can drop people off at, where you can pull the bus up to, because they've gotten into a practice of they will hand you a ticket through the window if you start unloading in the wrong place. There's just some things like that you need to know when you go into a city you're not familiar with.
All right. So you kind of touched on, the differences between a tour planner going it alone in a new city and working with a receptive. Can you give us a few more examples, like, getting a ticket through the bus window of things that you in Nashville or your peers in Chicago who serve Chicago can do just so much better or so much more affordably or deeper experiences? Give us some more stories about that.
Sure. So one of the big things is a lot of partners give me receptive rates, and everybody's in it to make money. So they're, it's going to cost me more if I use you. It may, obviously I'm going to get paid for the work that I do. However, I'm getting receptive rates everywhere or most places where you are not. You are going to get a group rate or a tour planner rate, but you're not going to get a receptive rate that I will get just for the volume of business. And I have that with hotels and I have that with vendors. I've contracted negotiated rates with some hotels that never change. Even if it's busy season, I'm still going to get that same rate. So it's easy for me to quote out a package and know that it's going to stick to cost. And they're rates that would never be for an outbound tour operator. So even if I'm planning it all for you and putting the work in, and even if I add a markup for my time, it's still not what you would think because my rates for things are lower than yours. So essentially it may break even. It may be the same cost, but you're not having to put any of the work in. The other thing is, it's a one-stop shop. The amount of time it takes, and it's not just to call the vendors or email the vendors, but to get return calls and return emails is sometimes daunting and takes days, sometimes a week or two to get back with somebody. I have everybody's cell phone numbers that I work with because we're friends outside of work. And so should something go wrong or should I need something immediately, I can always just shoot a text over and I'm going to get that response, where if you're somebody that they don't know, you're not. We can also have unique experiences planned for your groups that you're not going to find on TripAdvisor or on Google because we have those connections with people here. For example, we have some local singer-songwriters that do private shows for our groups, where if you look that up in Nashville, it's going to be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to do that from a company that does that. My cost is nowhere near that. I can do your dinner and your singer-songwriter dinner for a fraction of that, just because they're local, they're friend connections. We have private dinner shows and entertainers that you can't book on your own. And we know some really cool experiences, again, that they don't advertise on TripAdvisor. Maybe they're in a connecting town from Nashville to Memphis. And we know them, we know their contact, we have special pricing, and we're going to get you a stop there that you wouldn't know to book on your own. So there's just a whole gamut of opportunities. Not only do we know things about bus parking and timing and the best way for an itinerary to work, but we can also offer a lot of exclusives that you're not going to get for your groups.
So there are some group leaders out there and some tour operators even who really enjoy, because of their personalities, really enjoy being sort of the face of the tour experience. They want to be at the front of the motor coach with the microphone. They want to, greet everybody. They want to be perceived as the subject matter expert wherever they're going. So what does it look like for one of those people to work with your company where they're kind of, number one, handing over so much of the operations of the trip, but maybe also there's another guide coming on, or, somebody from your staff is involved? Like, how does that all work for the person that kind of wants to be in the spotlight?
Listen, it's scary, and I know that. And I'm very, I guess to say, I'm not blind to know that you're trusting essentially your babies and your family with somebody that you may not know. And I heard actually a good friend of mine with Sports and Leisure Vacations, Clayton Whitehead, said at an NTA meeting something that was profound to me, and it's kind of changed the way I've done business. He was giving everybody a tour of the floor at conference, and he said, would you trust your children if you were going out on a date night with just somebody you found on the street or on Google to babysit? And, of course, everyone's absolutely not. We would never. He said, okay, you would have a trusted family friend or somebody that you knew that you could trust to handle them. And he was absolutely right. And he said, well, my groups, my ladies that I take on tour, those are my babies. And I'm not just going to turn them over and trust them with somebody that I don't know or that I found online. And he was honing in on the importance of relationships. And when you're networking, it's not about telling your numbers and your facts and figures. You need to get to know people so they can trust you. And I've always thought about that, from that point on when I booked tours. And he did trust me with a group that they're coming this year. And so I'm very thankful for that. But I get it and I understand that. And yes, I look at this now as you're handing me your children and your livelihood when you're trusting me to book a group for you. So I take a lot of pride in that. And I'm very careful to make sure that it's kind of white labeled. So for example, when we do an itinerary, you're going to get it on my letterhead with my cost, but then you can change that to your letterhead and whatever cost you want to send out to your people. I try to really be available by text if I need to, because when you're presenting it and as questions come up, I don't want you to feel like, I don't know the answer to that. I have to call Stacy. So sometimes if you're on a phone call and you shoot me a text, hey, I've got a client asking, I want to answer that for you as soon as I can so that you can look like you are the front man for that trip. I do always have one of my local guides with them every single day that they're with me in Nashville or Memphis or Pigeon Forge. And the reason for that is to get some of those extras where they're going to think on their feet and always have answers. I just don't want to hand over a notebook to somebody when they come to my home. I mean, I'm inviting you here as a guest, and I would always greet my guests in my home and have dinner for them and have a nice place for them to stay. And I feel that way with my clients. I don't want to just hand them a notebook. So I hand you a whole person and let them be with you. However, you're still the group leader. You're the one who's keeping the ducks in the pond and we're just getting them, from point A to point B. And we really partner well. I always have my guides call whoever the tour director or local person or group leader will be ahead of time before they ever get into town. And they talk about things. And we really kind of default to, here's some options. What would you rather do? Or what will your people enjoy the most? And so we still default to them. And we're just we show up kind of as support and view it as that. Unless they want us to stand up and take the mic and take charge and do all the things, we're happy to do that as well.
So when I think of Nashville, I think of a city that is very, very popular with travelers right now. Some locals may argue that it's too popular at times or in some neighborhoods.
Some local tour operators may argue that too.
Yeah. So specifically in a place like Nashville or the Smokies, which you mentioned, which is also very, very popular. What are the specific advantages of working with a receptive in a place like that can be expensive? It can be crowded. You can get lost in a sea of bachelorette parties or whatever else it is.
That's so funny because the first thing we tell our travelers when they come through is, do you see everybody in the little white boots and the white hats and the skirts? None of them are from here. None of any of us dress. So, it's funny because Nashville's almost become a theme city. And if you visit here, you have to dress like that. And, those of us who've lived here forever, it's funny, it's comical. It does get hard with pedal taverns and just random new almost concepts for tourism that are not necessarily senior, adult, or student friendly. But again, that's where I love when people call me because I know the days and times that it's okay to let your group go down there and the times that I wouldn't recommend it, depending on who you are and how old you are. if it's a group of students, which we've had from West Virginia who have never been out of their little town, Nashville's overwhelming already.
Yeah.
But I would never put them on Broadway at 9:00 on a Friday night. We want to give them some free time. I'm like 100% no. We will do it at lunch, right? I mean, it's just a lot to take in. And so there's a lot to knowing your groups, knowing what they're going to love and what they're not going to love. And then also the time of year to come, if they have any flexibility, I can offer, hey, if you come a week earlier, I'm going to get things a lot cheaper. When people call and they want to come to Nashville in October, same as kind of a Pigeon Forge, more November, but if you want to come in October, you need to book a year ahead of time or you're not going to get the best seats. You're not going to get the best anything. If you can come a week earlier, the last week of September, I can get you better seats on things. And people just don't know that because everybody's busy season is different. Sometimes, again, they'll map quest things of how far they think it is or how long it should take. And it's just really, really off. And you can't. Then there's little things, for example, the General Jackson Showboat, depending on what season, they don't run every day. So we've had several calls of, I booked this for a Thursday and they're not running on a Thursday. No, I do know, actually. Let me help you with that. So, and I tell people this, there are a lot of really great outbound tour operators that do Tennessee and use us for step-on guide service only. So I in no way want to ding their program or for what they're doing because they do Nashville a lot. And it's the same. I tell them, if you're coming here to do the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Opry, the Ryman, and you're leaving, you're right. You can do that on your own. You do it 3 or 4 times a year. That's okay. But if you're newer or if you've never been here or if you want something unique and different from what you've done every other time, that's going to be a good time to call me. And I have no problem. People will say, Cece, you're talking yourself out of business. And I don't feel that way. I feel like being upfront and honest with people and telling them what the benefits are, or if they don't need your help, that's the best way to gain business. And like you said, to build those relationships. I don't ever want to go in and take your money if I'm not going to give you a value added. And I feel like being honest, you understand then that if you ever do need me or call me, I'm going to be upfront with you and I'm never going to take your money and not give you a good service.
I love that. So one thing I love to do on this podcast is just be real about money and about the cost of things. So can you walk us through a little bit more what the economics of working with a receptive look like? And you don't have to give us specific prices, but how much of a discount are you getting from your vendors? How much markup is there? How much more do I have to plan in my trip budget if I'm going to use your services?
So the great thing is I do net rate. So I'm going to put it all together for you. And I like to pride myself in being really quick with proposals because of some of those negotiated rates. I already know what they are in my head. But I also have I use Group Travel Odyssey. It's a planning software that I love. And so I can type something in and figure it out very quickly. So you're going to know from the very beginning what your all-in cost is. And then you can decide how much markup you want to put on that for yourself. If I'm selling B2B, which is my primary market, I don't mark it up as much because I know you have to mark it up too. And the problem is, yes, I can, everybody always wants to make more money, but if it's priced out of budget and it doesn't sell, nobody's making anything. So I'm very cognizant of that. If I'm selling it to a group directly where I'm going to have to do more work than just working with the representative from the business, then I have a little bit more room to mark it up. But for example, a lot of vendors here, the group, discount is 10%. Well, they give me 20. So I have an extra 10% built into a lot of things there. Some of my hotel rates, I don't know exactly what the percentage breaks down to, but I can get depending on where somebody's booking, sometimes $100 a night cheaper per room.
Wow.
I had a group come in that I don't do a lot of tour leader only packages just because they're not planned as well as what I would have done. And then my people get stuck on the ground with that. But I did have one or two come in and I looked at their hotel contracts because they had booked everything on their own. And that same hotel, I could have gotten $79 a night cheaper than what they just paid, which then pays for my service in itself.
Yeah. Especially if you've got 20 rooms on that trip, right? I mean, that's,
there were 3
79 times. Holy cow. That's a difference of close to $10,000 maybe. I mean, that's insane. Yeah.
And so that's more money for you. That's paid for my service. And like I said, I include the tour leader, the local with you every day. And it doesn't cost you anything because they don't have a hotel room, right? You're not paying for any of that for them. So man, that paid for my service, your service, and everybody's markup just in
Yeah.
what I could have saved in a hotel. So
Wow. That's amazing. So are your contracts per person? Is it a flat fee? How does somebody plan for all that?
So everything I'm going to do is going to be single, double, triple, quad rate. It's all per
Okay.
person, depending on hotel room. So once I give you that package, you go sell that package. You're going to turn in your rooming list, and I'll invoice you based off of that. But everything's included. The only thing that's not included usually is tip for the guide, and sometimes tip for the driver, depending on what I negotiate in my bus contracts. But I can do everything from transportation to hotel to all attractions. So what the price I give you is truly it. And the bus driver package is always included. Usually I include a comp. Sometimes people want to. I can do that as well. And then, as I said, depending on what they want to make, they can put their markup on top of that. So it's not commission based on my end. We're not having to go back and forth with percentages. It is, here is what you owe me for this package based on the rooms that, the room makeup that you sell. If they want to add $100 per person on top of that, that's fine. I don't even have to see any of that. So that way the people are paying them directly, and they're just going to cut me one check. And that's it. I book everything else from there.
Yeah. So I hear a lot of tour operators these days really complaining about attrition and other kind of strict contractual clauses like that. So how does that work with a receptive, a middleman? Do you have flexibility around attrition, or can you kind of pull some strings with your friends that, other people can't?
I won't work with hotels that use attrition at all.
Oh, wow.
Ever.
Wow.
So, and again, I think a lot of that is because primarily I'm selling Tennessee and then these same one or two city destinations. So I've got those relationships where I'm going to bring in enough volume that they don't need to do that. I also require payment 45 days out from my customers. And really, I can really push to 30 days out, but I pay for things 30 days out. So I will pay my vendors, my hotels 30 days ahead of time. So they don't need to do attrition because they're going to know a month ahead of time and have their money if we're coming. But on the whole, I never have that issue because I just won't work with vendors. That way, there's too many that understand group travel and they get that it's still being sold to clients. We don't know yet.
Yeah. All right. So tell us about this decision you made to start doing some outbound trips. I'm curious who the clients are there and how you're selecting the cities you want to go to and how you're developing product in those cities or who you're working with in those cities. I mean, how do you carry your brand standard, across to outbound that matches up with what you've been doing as a receptive?
That has been a really tough lane for me to figure out because, as I said, if I don't do it as well as I did your Tennessee trip, that's what you expect. The only reason you're asking me for another city is because you were very happy with how I did your Tennessee trip. And so if I don't feel ready to sell it, I won't. I said, there is a trip that I've used a receptive tour operator for, but either I or one of my employees will be going on that trip too, because we're going to learn how to do that ourselves. The other very helpful thing has been the fam tours. I'm very careful about choosing FAMs that I will actually send groups to. Number one, I don't want to waste anyone else's time, resources, or money, but also my time and out of the office and going. So I really have looked for, it's been really advantageous actually going on the FAM with you all to Cajun Country and to Myrtle Beach, because those are both things that are on my website that people have requested. So I just feel like after you go yourself and you run through the itinerary, it just makes everything so much clearer, so much easier of, okay, I know how to do this now. I can do this. Or like I said, even I will use a receptive on something if I need to until I feel like I'm confident in doing it on my own, just because I believe, I said, so much on what receptives do.
All right. So I wonder if you could offer any advice to people in the tourism community in other cities who have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, who might be saying, hey, you know what? I don't think there's a good receptive company in my city. Maybe that's a void that I could fill. How should somebody like that get started? What are steps 1, 2, and 3 in going from, having this idea to welcoming your first group as a receptive operator?
I think the big advantage to places that don't already have receptive operators are that the CVBs are usually really hands-on, because if you don't If they don't create that business, there is no tour business. So thankfully in places like that, and I can say Myrtle Beach has been fantastic about it. They've not had a receptive tour operator. I understand there is one there now, which is great. And I'm very happy to see that coming. But they've been selling their city like a tour operator. They've been packaging things. There are theaters and restaurants that will package things together because there's not been anybody to do it. So finding that market is a great place to start. And then go ahead and join your local CVB. Get to know those people very well. Work hand in hand with them and tell them what you're wanting to do, because really you're an extension of their sales force. So in most cases, they really want to help you. They're not commissions based. They're getting paid for hotel nights in their city. And if you're selling that for them, plus the other attractions, you're actually taking some work off of their load. And I would imagine they'd be very happy to have you. So those are going to be the key people you want to go with first. You can do fam cities tours in your own city. So you can ask them to, hey, the next time you have a fam coming, or can you take me around? A lot of times they work very closely with all of the vendors, and they'll get you into those places so that you can do what's called a site visit. And you can go check those places out to see how they work. And if your groups would enjoy them, you can talk to the group sales. Always call and ask for the group sales manager or coordinator or who's in group sales at every venue. And they'll be able to kind of give you the process for how that works and what your pricing would be. So I would always say start with the CVB. The next tier may be the actual group sales reps at each location, understanding that nowadays, a lot of times they don't actually work at that location.
Right.
So you may call another state to get the group sales rep for your particular theater, and that's okay. That's very normal now. So you don't have to live where you sell, which I guess is another thing, is you could be a receptive tour operator and not necessarily live in that city, but close by. You could live a little bit away, and that's okay. As a receptive, if somebody's interested in being a receptive somewhere that I don't sell, I'm always happy to have that conversation. And that happens a lot after trade shows and ABA. And hey, I want to get started. And I'm happy to have those calls with people to help them. Like, this is what I've done and this is where I am. So, to try that in their city.
Yeah. Wonderful. So if people want to get in touch with you for a conversation like that, or to learn more about Sharin the South and all your different services, what is the best way for them to reach out?
You can always email me. It's just stacy@sharinthesouth.com. Or, you can call. I don't even ever mind giving out my cell phone number. I do that often, and it's on my signature block of all of my emails. So definitely shoot me an email. That's probably the easiest way. Those come through to my phone. And unfortunately, I have very little balance in my life and will answer them at all times. So definitely, I have Stacy@sharinthesouth.com or sharinthesouth@gmail.com. I know a lot of people still use that one, and that's okay too. And I'm always happy to set up a call and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, before we let you go, we have some final questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun. So no pressure, just off the top of your head. When you book travel, are you going to book a window seat or an aisle seat?
Oh, this is hard. I've changed. I used to always book an aisle because I wanted to get off the plane. The worst part of flying or anything to me is when people are unloading and they just stand there forever. But I've since gotten sleepy and as I've aged, and now I want a window seat so that I can go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, having as many kids as you have will do that to you.
It's true.
For sure. For sure. All right. What is one thing in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
Snacks. Very easy. I can buy something anywhere I go, but I'm not going to get stuck without a snack.
Okay. So what's the snack of choice?
Oh, no, that one's tough, Brian. I don't know. I need a sweet and a salty. And a Dr. Pepper. That's probably the biggest one. I need a Dr. Pepper.
There you go. I love it. All right. So if you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
If I was going alone, it would be to a beach, any beach, anywhere. If I was going with my husband, he has been desperate to go to Ireland for many years. So I would use it to take him there.
Wonderful. So sweet. All right. Last question. What is something you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
I could honestly tell you every single fam tour I've been on, all I do the entire time is think about Riley would love this. Reagan would have so much fun here. This Berkeley would be excited. Eddie would love the show. So I'll constantly think about my family and how they would see it. So truly anywhere I go, and I think it's maybe being a military spouse for so long, and I'm used to being new places and experiencing that as a family, that to go places alone and not have them there is tough, because I really want my kids to see and do and experience outside of their own box. That's just so important, I think, to a person growing and developing. So
Yeah.
I know the cliche mom answer, but it's true. It's true.
I know you can't turn off that part of yourself. It's the same for me. My kids are in elementary school, and everywhere I go, I'm like, I wonder when they're going to be old enough to bring them here, to really enjoy this or that experience. So, Stacy, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stacy as much as I did. Stacy is a delightful person to know, and I really appreciate her candor and her openness and her commitment to providing real value and the best value for travelers, even if that means selling them less than her most expensive package. Now, I want to hit some of the things that Stacy said one more time to make sure you don't miss them. When we were talking about some of the built-in advantages that receptive operators have that normal outbound tour operators don't have, Stacy said, a lot of partners give me receptive rates. I'm getting receptive rates most places, and you are not. I have that relationship with hotels and vendors. I have contracted negotiated rates that never change, even if it's busy season. I'm still going to get that same rate. And they're rates that would never be for an outbound tour operator. So even if I'm planning it all for you and putting the work in, and even if I add a markup for my time, it's still not what you would think, because my rates for things are much lower than yours. It may be the same cost, but you're not going to have to put in any of the work. Now, I am all about the dollars and cents, and I have never heard a more clear articulation of value than what Stacy said right there. You may like it or you may not like it, but the fact is, Stacy and people like her in destinations all over the country have spent years, maybe even decades, building relationships that you don't have. And because of that, they have access that you don't have. They have access to amenities, they have access to experiences, they have access to help, and they have access to better prices. So I think Stacy's absolutely right that you shouldn't immediately assume that working with a receptive operator is going to raise the price of your tours. In some instances, it's not going to raise the price at all, but it might very well raise the value. Stacy had more to say along those lines when I dug in about some of the economics of working with receptive operators. She was talking about Nashville, and she said, a lot of vendors here, their group discount is 10%. Well, they give me 20%. And depending on where they're staying, I can get hotels sometimes $100 per night cheaper per room. That then pays for my service in itself. I'll step in here and say, in a city like Nashville, this can be invaluable. This can be a huge difference maker. And it's not just Nashville. There are certainly cities across the country where hotel rates have risen so high that they can seem basically unaffordable to many travel groups. But don't let those high rack rates dissuade you from looking into visiting a place you have always wanted to go. You may just need to find Stacy or the person like Stacy in whatever place you want to go to. Find somebody that has access to those discounts. Work your relationships, work a deal, find a way to get your people to the places they want to go. And if you can do that, you are going to be their hero for helping them visit a place they might have thought they couldn't afford to visit. And finally, I want to highlight one thing that Stacy said when she talked about why it's so important for her to take fam tours. She said, I'm very careful about choosing fams that I will actually send groups to. I don't want to waste anyone else's time, resources, or money, but also my time. But it's been really advantageous going on fams with you all. She was referring to us at the Group Travel Leader and our on-site familiarization program. She said, after you go yourself and you run through the itinerary, it makes everything so much clearer. Well, I can't agree with Stacy anymore, and I'm so appreciative that she is so choosy and selective about the fams that she goes on. Not everybody is, but she recognizes the investment being made in a fam by the host, by any third-party organizer like our organization. And she recognizes that it's an investment of her time and some of her resources as well. And I think we would all do well to remember that it's a big investment, that it's an important opportunity. And while it may be fun, it's also a lot of work, and we need to take it seriously whenever we have the opportunity to join people on a familiarization tour. Great stuff there from Stacy Barry. Well, we talked earlier in the show about Amsterdam and the challenges that city leaders there are facing regarding both over-tourism and badly behaved tourists who come to town for the wrong reasons. And it got me thinking more about Amsterdam and some places like it and the challenges they're facing, and maybe some potential solutions to those challenges. I've got some thoughts on that to share, and that will be the topic of today's Hot Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Hot Minute is the portion of the show where I normally take 60 seconds to give you my thoughts on an issue that impacts tourism every day. This issue in particular is one that I am really passionate about. It's close to my heart. And so today, we're not going to worry about the timer, and I'm not going to play the ticking clock sound effect. Instead, I'm just going to speak from the heart about what I would say to the people of Amsterdam. I hope you'll listen. You can skip ahead if you want, but this is an important topic, and I believe it's a message that we need to send loud and clear. So here goes. I don't have answers for all the problems of over-tourism. But if Amsterdam leaders are serious about cleaning up visitor behavior, I have a very simple solution. Close the red light district. I have been to Amsterdam. I found its culture and its canals and its cuisine absolutely charming. But the city's legal prostitution zone wasn't charming at all. When I walked briefly past the neighborhood in the mid-afternoon, it was crawling with loud and lewd middle-aged men who were already drunk. And the image of young women standing half naked in storefront windows, hoping to lure those same men inside, it was absolutely heartbreaking. Now, the simple truth is this. Those men came to Amsterdam because those women were there and available for purchase. Now, in the Netherlands, as well as other places like Costa Rica and Thailand, libertine governments have led to the creation of a sex tourism industry. And though that industry might be profitable, it's also deeply exploitative. Now, many of the young women and men who work in that industry are victims of abuse and addiction. Some of them are even victims of human trafficking. And there's nothing fun or cute about the red light district or the exploitation that takes place there. So my message to the leaders of Amsterdam is simple. It's time to shut it down. Not relocate it. Not hide it behind closed doors. Shut it down. Your citizens deserve better. Your visitors deserve better. And the people being bought and sold there deserve better too. That's the Hot Minute for today. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this issue. If you have an issue you are passionate about, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us at podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every email that comes into that address. I love hearing your thoughts and questions and ideas. And hey, you never know. Your email might just be the topic of the next Hot Minute. And hey, while you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? Give us a rating, leave us a review. We really appreciate that. That is super helpful. And my thanks to everyone who has done that so far. Thanks as well to Stacy Barry for joining us today. On the next episode of Gather and Go, we're going to have a fascinating conversation with Patrick Marsden of Masher. He's going to talk all about how we can help people improve mental health with better travel habits. It's an important conversation. It is a very relevant conversation for our life and times today. You are not going to want to miss that. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we're all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Jewell. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Danya Simmons is our creative director. Ashley Ricks is our circulation manager and graphic designer. Our sales team is Kyle Anderson and Talisa Reck. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the group Travel Leader. For more information about our magazines, podcasts, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com. This episode was brought to you by Coastal Mississippi. Plan your best trip to Coastal Mississippi. Suntime recreation and dinnertime reservations will have you losing track of time with beautiful waterways and seafood fillets. Visit coastalmississippi.com and go have some fun for fun's sake.